My name is Peter Maguire. In 1997, I created and launched jazz clubs worldwide. The past year or so has been something of an existential crisis for the jazz scene worldwide. Upside or downside, it has, however, provided space and time for reflection. Jazz, My Life, is a non-sequential series of my own personal recollection and thoughts about my own lifelong immersion in the world of jazz. If you feel inclined to do so, please click on the subscribe button and the notification Saxman icon. The letter I received that particular morning commenced. Dear Peter, we are going to open a jazz club in the cellar under our house. This was from Mike Seeland's mother. Mike Seeland was a bass player, a face around the Manchester scene and London too. Good player. And he lived with his mother in a place called Victoria Park, Manchester. It's a really curious area. It was actually established in the early 19th century on 70 acres of open land. And eventually on this land was built maybe at least 20 very grandiose houses. You have to remember that in the 19th century that Manchester was the cotton metropolis of the world, and the folks at the top of the triangle in fact were making enormous amounts of money, and of course they wanted to display their wealth by living in grand houses. Many of them in fact found places to build up and above Salford and beyond there, above the smoke and the filth. You can just imagine what Manchester was like at that time. You just have a look at read Engels on the condition of the English working class, which is based primarily on the Manchester experience. However, Victoria Park had these large houses. It was also had an entrance, and apparently people could pay a small toll and presumably walk around there and enjoy the trees and the grass and the flowers and everything. And it was only situated, probably no more than 1.5 miles from Manchester town centre. Well, at the period I'm talking about, in fact, it still existed, but obviously had declined mightily over the years. I think particularly from the 1920s onwards, nobody could maintain these kind of houses anymore. Most of the houses still existed, and it was a very strange place. I mean, for instance, there were no street lights. Once you went in there, it would have made an ideal location for a Hitchcock movie. Anyway, Mike Seeland and mother lived in one of these houses in the middle of this extremely curious domain. And true to form, they actually did open a jazz cellar in the extremely large cellar of the place they lived in. It was a pretty Spartan place, but they had a very good piano down there. I can't even remember whether they had you could buy a drink down there, quite frankly. It was all rather mysterious. But you have to remember that at this period Manchester was a very, very vibrant town for jazz. There was at least 14, 15 jazz clubs, and international names would appear regularly at the Free Trade Hall and also in the jazz clubs, 43, Clarendon Club, major names. And they would eventually find themselves in Mike Seeland's cellar. It was also something that doesn't happen quite so much anymore, but musicians, after they'd finished their gigs, like nothing more than to wander off somewhere and find a place to play for the rest of the night. But you never really knew who was going to be there. I remember seeing down there Phil Seaman, Zoot Sims, jamming with the late Duncan Lamont, many other international faces and top draw musicians from the local scene would be down there. John Mayall, the blues player, The legendary John Mayall, in fact, he was a regular visitor to this particular space. One of the pleasant things about Mike Seeland's Jazz Cellar was that if you went into the garden, there was a wall dividing their garden from next door. And all you had to do was climb over the wall, and up against what was the kitchen wall, you'd see maybe, I don't know, 50, 60 beer crates. This was a shebeen. If you don't know what a shebeen is, it's an after-hours drinking establishment, which Manchester had quite a few actually at that time, because you have to remember with pub hours, I think the pubs closed at 10:30. So if you wanted to drink, you could only do it illegally. I can remember clearly climbing over the wall and hearing for the first time Nina Simone singing I Love You Porgy. This particular shebeen was run by a very, very good trombone player called Eddie Warburton, a kind of small, rotund man who'd been a military bandsman at one time, and in fact was the resident trombonist at a club called the Shea Joey in Manchester, which was run by a well-known wrestler and a great hangout for the wrestling fraternity. And I suppose to make money and to get friends in there, he had a shebeen. It would be always full of musicians drinking beer, so it was a wonderful combination. You had Mike Seeland and his mother's Jazz Cellar with, you never knew who was going to be there. I mean, incredible. I mean, really big names. Many who, in fact, would graffiti the walls with their signatures. And if you felt like a bear, basically you went into the garden, climbed over the wall, and there was Eddie Warburton's shebeen, where you had beer and a continuation of top-class jazz played on the record player.